means people can sit outside then after June 1st,
Mhm.
up to 50. They're 50 there. Social distancing, yeah. I will do a brief legislative report for you to the administration report tonight, Mark.
Okay.
I don't know if you saw my note when I sent out the agenda, but we talked about in case people lose connectivity, you know, because we have to make sure we have a quorum. We didn't talk about that before, but it could happen, you know, knock on wood. But I said in the note that they could call the superintendent's cell phone number if they should lose the connection.
Sense to,
Is it cool?
some of it is, yeah.
Hello all.
Hi, Lori.
Hi, Julie. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, all things considered.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
appreciate seeing all those activities those young people are going to be engaged in.
yeah, kind of fun.
That's good.
Jolene's on, I see. I guess I probably could do gallery view, huh? Well, there's a whole bunch of people on.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We're just so that everyone's aware, we're live on YouTube live right now. So we're going to start the meeting here in just a couple of minutes.
So I should mute myself, is what you're saying.
We'll begin the meeting at 5:30.
Get your flag ready to go. Flag.
Flag is, I gotta go to present. So once you do that, once you call to order, then I'll do my best to get as quickly as we can to the flag.
Perfect. I was going to say you could do it while Eric is taking the roll call, but if Eric is dependent upon the screen,
Just maybe have a quick reminder for all that they should mute themselves if they're on.
looks like everybody is.
Mr. Storm, do you want to mute yourself until we get to the middle school presentation? Thank you.
Clicked outside the Zoom thing and now everybody's gone. How do I get everybody back?
Go to the very bottom, go from camera.
There we are. Oh, it's 5:30. Okay, welcome everybody. We are the Owatonna School Board. This is Wednesday. It's May 20th. It's 5:30. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Eric, I'll have you do the roll call.
Yep. Nikki,
Here.
Jolene,
Here.
Mark,
Here.
Christina,
Here.
Tim,
Here.
Lori,
Here.
I myself is here. Logan. I think we're just missing the student rep.
Okay. We are all here. Eric, thank you very much. And as we are getting ready, we will, I'll ask all of you to, if you could rise and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, welcome everybody. It's nice to see all of you again. A first item tonight would be to approve the agenda as presented.
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
Get it, Sarah? Jolene had the second. Has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Oh, wait, Eric, it's got to do a roll call vote again.
Yep. Nikki,
Aye.
Jolene,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Christina,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
and I myself is an aye. 7-0.
Motion carries. Thank you. First item tonight would be our mission moment. I'll turn things over to Mr. Elstad.
Thank you, Chair Sebring, members of the board. Can I just get a thumbs up? I'll ask if Mr. Sebring, because we're sitting in the same space, can see the PowerPoint I'm sharing right now.
Yes.
Okay. It is my pleasure tonight to use our mission moment spotlight to talk about some very dedicated individuals doing some great work for our school district, and that would be the Owatonna Public Schools Success Coaches. Tonight, our mission moment centers around equity and all of the work that our success coaches do to reach all parts of our community that contribute to the betterment of the school system and certainly Owatonna at large. They bring great value to the work that we're doing and the connectedness that we have with our families. And I would say even during this pandemic time, have been working overtime to try to make sure that we're connecting with all of our families. I'm also proud tonight to introduce Dr. Martina Wagner, who assists us and works with success coaches on a daily basis. And so at this point, I would love to turn it over to Dr. Wagner.
Thank you. I am very excited to be able to highlight our success coaches. You're going to have an opportunity this evening to actually see all of the work that they have contributed to ISD 761. I hope that they are online right now. I just want to give a shout out to all of our success coaches: Ana Alvarez, Melina Caballero, Kadra Muhidin, Tonya Sanchez Mendez, Muna Hersey, Nora Elmi, Hussein Osman. And in the picture that you see here, Sylvia Zavala is not in the picture, but she is certainly part of the team. I'm going to talk a little bit about the growth of this team. Last year, we changed their role dynamically. They are now advocates for our students, our families, and our district. To put it best, I had a colleague, Ann Michelson, say to me, they are really about no family left behind. And in this distance learning, I will tell you that they have gone above and beyond what would be expected a success coach, a liaison, a translator to do. So I'm just humbled by their work. By being their leader, I don't see myself as their supervisor. I see myself just as part of a team where I'm walking alongside them. They impact not only our teaching staff, but our students and our families. And I can't even express how humble it is to actually see them biculturate. So actually navigating back and forth between a very westernized system to the cultures that our families represent in the district. So that's really, in a nutshell, highlighting the work that they have. I could go on for hours, but I certainly just want to give a shout out to all the work that they do. And I am looking forward to sharing some showcase of what our district leaders, families, students, and teachers have actually shared about them. Jeff, do you want me to follow this?
Are you looking to share the video tonight, Dr. Wagner, or?
We are going to make a lengthier video and hopefully have Sarah share it with the connections that get sent out. So we are.
Very good. Okay. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Just in closing, if I may, again, I want to reiterate what Martina shared with us. They've really been a clear linkage from the very get-go of our strategic roadmap. We made equity a commitment of ours. And these folks, again, provide that vital link for us. But also make equity real for us and reaching every single family and student. So with that, I want to just continue to lift them up as part of our mission moment tonight.
Great report. Thank you. And congrats to the success coaches and the work of Dr. Wagner. Item 5 tonight is public forum. I'll turn over here and double check with Sarah. Did we have any comments that came in for public forum? We did not. Going to move on. Item 6 tonight in reports. The very first report would be coming from the Owatonna Middle School. I'll turn things over to Mr. Elstad for some introductions.
Thank you, Chair Sebring and members of the board. Tonight, Julie Sullivan is here tonight, and it looks like we have a number of middle school staff members, and I'm smiling tonight because I haven't seen some of their faces in a long time, and I'm seeing faces of teachers from our middle school along with our administrative team tonight. And so I want to push this over to Julie Sullivan, and she will introduce the topic and her speakers for tonight.
Good evening, school board members. Thanks for having us tonight. When we originally were scheduled to be a part of the board meeting in March, we started in probably January deciding, what did we want to showcase? And we kind of whittled it down to our Phi-Ed department because we think they're doing some pretty amazing things. And we think Phi-Ed at the middle level is absolutely critical to get kids up and moving. And so our electives along with our core classes are kind of what you're going to hear about tonight, probably even a little bit more about some of the elective classes. So with us tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to them, is Nikki Bergmeyer, Josh Storm, Pat Webb. I didn't see Amanda Flores. She might be here. I can't see everybody on here. And Tim Hunst. And so I'm going to turn it over to them. They have a presentation for you.
Can everyone see that? Perfect. So I am Nikki Bergmeyer, and I actually started here at OMS when it became a true middle school. And that's also when OMS PE started growing. That's when we started adding in the electives. In our first year, we add strength training 1, conditioning, team sports, and outdoor activities. Then year 2, because the numbers were there, we added strength training 2, so kids continue to grow in that area. And then this last year, we added in biking, which I'm going to turn this over to Tim to talk about our fleet of bikes.
I don't know if you guys can see the, I'm not seeing the PowerPoint. I'm seeing the slides. I'm seeing your desktop. Just,
You're seeing my desktop?
yeah,
Okay.
I see your mouse moving.
It should be.
So for whatever reason, I'm just seeing online business, the Rogue Gym and all that stuff. So I don't know, the rest of you, can you see that on our, I can't get the app on this, so I'm going through the browser because I can't get that on my school computer.
Seeing the same.
I got.
Can you see it now?
I cannot, but that's okay. We can move on.
Okay.
That's okay. We can talk through it. It's not the end of the world on that. So as Nikki talked about, our electives have grown really rapidly, and one of the big things that we've added and has been kind of the cornerstone of what we've done to expand at the middle school is our bike fleet. We were fortunate enough to acquire a 40 fat bike fleet. We were the only middle school, junior high fat bike fleet that I know of. We were definitely the first one that Surly had ever dealt with. We were able to secure those with a lot of help from them. Financially, there's no way that we could have bought the bikes if we would have paid retail on them. And Surly worked with us really well. We had some really good partnerships with local businesses, including Straight River Sports, and we got some help from Ship. We got a lot of help to get them. But the big thing is we got 40 fat bikes, and if you've not been on one, they're a ton of fun, and they are basically indestructible. We sized them out, we color coded those, and we've actually named the bikes instead of numbering them, so that's the way we identify them. If you can see Nikki's slides, the next one is why did we go with fat bikes? They're way more expensive. They're definitely not easy to store, but the big thing for us was that we wanted to be able to have a bike that we could ride year round. Wherever it was, we wanted to be able to go, whether it was raining, whether it was nice outside, pavement, mud, snow, it didn't matter. We could go out on the bikes, and then we've really taken advantage of that. When we, one thing that happened for us was that we weren't expecting it, but new riders tend to be able to learn how to ride easier on a fat bike. So every year we're teaching 8 to 15 kids how to ride a bike for the first time, which might alarm a lot of people, but it's where we're at. And if they haven't learned by the time they get into the middle school, it's time to learn. So we take care of that. The big thing for us was to be able to expand the classroom. We added at the middle school, we added an entire grade level, and we needed space. We wanted kids to be more active. The biggest place where we could go was outside. And this expands our classroom infinitely. We've had a lot of help from the Owatonna Trail Association to be able to maintain the trails, but we're getting the kids some exercise. We're teaching them about transportation, enjoyment, the rules of the road, so that people aren't wondering what the heck those kids are doing, more that, oh, good, they're riding on the correct side of the road. They're signaling, they're doing things to be predictable. Just being responsible. And the other thing is to be community stewards, to learn how to take care of your equipment, any facility that you're at, and just our community in general. So with that, I'll turn it over to Josh.
Hi there, I'm Josh Storm. Pretty excited to talk about where we're kind of moving to in the future here in OMMS PE. We're really excited for next year. We have a couple different new things coming online next year. One of them is called Waterworks, which will be a class, an elective class that's in the pool. And another one that I think that is going to get a lot of attention is PE Plus. What PE Plus is going to be is a program for some students who might need extra movement, might help them be more successful throughout the rest of their day if they have an opportunity to do an entire general PE block rather than just a traditional skinny. So we're looking forward to that next year. Next year, we'll have 7 total electives offered in physical education. So PE Plus, a little bit more, is targeted students. We targeted certain students who we felt needed the movement behaviorally, but also to kind of get calmed down in class to be able to be successful. For that class, it was offered in our guidebook to sign up for. 118 students of our 7th grade, and that's the only group it'll be offered for next year, signed up for that. And that's 30% of them wanted to be in the class. We only have a couple sections, so that many weren't allowed to get it. They weren't allowed to have it, all of them, but that's just a sign to me that people want to be in physical education in our building. Our current enrollment for the 7th graders, current 6th graders, 7th graders next year is 385 students. We have 372 to be 8th graders for a total of 757 students who are allowed to sign up for electives for our 2020-2021 school year. 81% of those students, so 610 students, picked PE electives as their primary choice. And 88%, so 668 students, picked PE electives as their second choice. So I think that shows how, oh, there we go, awesome. How excited that our students are about physical education. So to break down, we have 56 electives offered at Owatonna Middle School, and 6 are physical education, or 7 will be physical education electives next year. So we have 11% of all electives are Phy Ed electives, and 40% of all the student choice of their electives was in physical education. So we're pretty excited that the students who are, you know, the most important clients that we have are very excited about the offerings that we have at our middle school. And I'll turn it over to Nikki and she can go from there.
Thanks for figuring that out, Tim. So why is PE growing? Obviously the students want to be there, but what we're seeing as PE teachers and our admin are seeing is it provides an outlet, and it's a positive outlet for our students. It's giving them that collaboration and that social interaction that we're all craving right now. It also gives a student a chance to come to school and be successful in something that they enjoy. It might be the only reason they're coming to school because it's that one thing that they can be successful in. And then it's decreasing our negative behaviors because our middle school students need to move, and it's giving them that chance to move, and it's giving them their brain power to sit in their next class. And as a staff, we're seeing that, but our students are also noticing it. If you see this, we surveyed all of our students that were in electives this year, and they're saying if I was stressed, it helped me relax. I found that I was more relaxed after class. My favorite one on there is that it gave me more confidence. It gave me the ability to push myself and work hard. So it's really cool to see that the students are actually seeing those changes too while they're in those classes. And lastly, what we're doing is we are using our social media accounts. With our social media accounts, we're searching to learn more for our students, but we're also showing the community the cool things our kids are doing, like learning how to ride a bike for the very first time in middle school. But that is the end of our presentation. We'd like to open it up for any questions.
Mr. Elstead, you'll notice my timer says 8 minutes and 42 seconds. Well done, Phy Ed department.
Board members, any questions?
I do. This is Nikki.
Hi, Nikki.
Go ahead.
Hi. So I'm hearing a lot about electives. So is gym in general a requirement in the middle school level, or is it gym plus an elective, or just an elective?
In physical education, all students 6th, 7th, and 8th have a general physical education on either an A day or B day. So once every 2 days, they have what ends up being, I think it's a 34-minute block where they must take physical education.
Thank you.
I got a
And
question.
Go ahead, Lori.
Yeah, just a couple. I'll just throw them both out here. Just to kind of follow up on that. Curious whether the bikes are being used in any way in general physical education classes. And then secondly, how many electives, just how many options does say a 7th grader or an 8th grader have in their schedule over the course of the year? How many kind of electives can they choose? So 2 questions.
I can take the first one.
Yep,
On
Tim,
the
go
bike.
ahead.
Okay, on the bikes in general, we do use them in the general PE classes. We generally will keep those on campus because it's a shorter period. And so the logistics of getting seats adjusted and helmets and bikes and stuff out, we keep them on campus and run them that way for the general PE classes. We run a winter wonderland where the city of Owatonna comes out, the Park and Rec department, and will pack a trail for us and do all that stuff. So we have a blast with that. And every kid has an option to do that. And it's basically advertising for the class. But as far as other classes, outdoor activities uses the bikes for the elective. That was where we really started it. And then it graduated into the biking elective, which we had 3 sections last year. And that's in that hour, 90-minute or so block.
And Lori, your second question, 7th grade gets to choose 2 electives and 8th grade gets to choose 5 electives.
Okay. Over the course of the year.
Over the course of the year, yep.
Thank you.
So I have one additional question. So with this whole online opportunity that we have right now, how are your gym classes working? I know I myself am struggling to be active. So wondering how you're keeping track of all that.
You know what, we came up with a plan from the very beginning to do 3 different type of days. We do a movement day where they get a real choice in what they do, kind of a workout day on Wednesdays, and then a fundamental day Friday, so they can kind of work on some of their skills that they have for different sports they play. And if they're not a student who plays sports, then they can go and do, play catch or do striking, do those type of skills that we would use in Phi-Ed. It's going very well, I think, from my perspective and our department's perspective. But I think, we're realizing how much we miss our students and the interactions that we have on a daily basis.
Perfect, thank you. And I did see the video of your sons dancing. I'm hoping that that's not part of your curriculum.
Oh, it's coming more and more in the future, so.
Josh, I have a follow-up question, and the numbers that you had rattled off, they would be specific to the 7th and 8th grade. So are there any electives at all that your 6th graders have as an opportunity?
I believe the 6th grade, Julie can correct me if I'm wrong, the 6th grade has a wheel that they follow. So they take some, I think that Julie can probably help me out a little bit more on that, but they do a wheel that they follow. So they don't necessarily have electives. But we actually are starting to add more and more choice into their PE. Certain points of the year. Right now in PE, we would probably be doing a lot of it where they could go with one of the 2 or 3 teachers that's on at the time, where they can pick an activity to do that they're interested in. And that seems to be a really good way to kind of end the year, kind of call it like exploration type days.
And Mark, 6th grade does not choose traditional electives. They do have 6 wheel classes that they rotate through during the year, and they have 6 different wheel classes in 7th grade. So in addition to the 2 electives in 7th grade, they get the 6 different wheel classes there.
Oh, terrific. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Tim, I have a follow-up question for you as well. I've seen the pictures and video that you post on social media. Do you really get the kids to ride all the way from the middle school through Kaplan's Woods and then back to the middle school in one class period?
That's a little magic, video magic. We have ridden to Kaplan's Woods and back. We've gone on some really big tours, but those days that we're in Kaplan's, logistically, you wouldn't be able to get enough in. And so we actually have worked with the county, and we've use the fairgrounds to store bikes during that time. We'll bus over, hop on the bikes at the fairgrounds, ride down to Kaplan's, ride through. Some will take a really long loop, some will take a shorter loop, and then we hop back on the trail right back to the fairgrounds and hop on the bus. So
That's terrific.
yeah, it's just
Great way to do
little
it.
cinema magic for you.
I like it. I bought it. Board members, any more questions?
One thing that I see Aaron made a comment about it. With the bikes, we're utilizing a donated set of Bluetooth helmets, which allow me, wherever I'm at in the line, whether I'm leading, whether I'm in the middle, whether I'm in the back, to be in contact with another student or students that are, if I take the lead, I'll have somebody in the middle and I'll have my sweep, and we'll be able to communicate. If anything happens, they're able to talk to me. The bad thing for them is they have to listen to me the whole time, but it tends to really change the behavior of some of those kids. You put one of those helmets on a kid that you would never ever want to put that helmet on, and they become a different kid. It's just amazing how it changes them when they get that responsibility. So thank you for mentioning that, Aaron.
That's great.
And board, I just, thank you for letting us, present, I think, a department that is pretty progressive and doing some pretty amazing things. And I would venture to say they have more offerings at a middle school than probably just about any school in the state right now. I'd be hard pressed to find another school that's doing what they are. So that's why we want to showcase that tonight. Thanks for letting us share.
That's fantastic.
I have just a couple of other closing comments. I'm very proud of our staff, but I want to just call out a couple of things that I want to reiterate what Julie just mentioned. I think we are probably the envy of some other middle schools, but that goes to the fact that our staff have taken the time to really innovate the curriculum, make it student-centered, make it about student voice and choice, because we're starting to see their interest. And you can see that the sections are growing because our staff are hearing our students and designing coursework around what they find to be important. And I think that's fantastic. And it certainly reflects what we want to do for our students. It's 21st century learning because we are responding to what students are informing us about. The other thing I would tell you is I have a middle school student advisory, and I hear every single time I go to my advisory how cool the Phi Ed department is and how much they're doing to really listen to students, because kids talk about that. And they talk about fat bike riding. They talk about all of the exploration. They talk about the outdoor activities that are happening, and that it's not a typical Phi Ed class. And I think students appreciate that. And I certainly know that they're preparing students for life, not just maybe for that one sport or two sports or even three sports that they might compete in. They're preparing kids for life. And I think that's all of our goals. So hats off to you. Thank you to our middle school PE staff and administration for creating the systems to allow those things to happen as well.
Thank you. I'm going to have a serious talk with Ed Draheim because we never had anything this fun when I was in 7th grade. Moving on to item B. Item B is achievement and integration update. I'll turn things over to Mr. Elstad.
Thank you. And I do want to let the middle school staff members know that if you have other things you need to get to tonight, we will not be take offense to you leaving the meeting if you so choose. But thank you again. The next item, as Chair Sebring mentioned, is our achievement and integration. It is a program that is a grant for the Owatonna Public Schools. And at this point, I will turn that over to Michelle Krell, our Director of Teaching and Learning, as well as Martina Wagner. Oh, you have to unmute, Michelle, sorry.
Sorry, good evening, everyone. I'm trying to share the screen too, so I'm trying to multitask here. I'm pleased to be in front of you today as we share some information on our Achievement and Integration Grant. As you recall, back in, I believe, the spring of 2019, Dr. Martina Wagner and I had come in front of you. Oh, there we go. Am I doing that or somebody else is doing that for me? Thank you. We had come before you with the prospect of the fact that we were identified for an Achievement and Integration Grant. And we shared some of those initiatives with you. And some of the initiatives we have spent some time sharing with you throughout the school year. You've heard about the REACH program, and you've heard about our Rising Scholars program, and some of those other programs. But what we want to be able to do today is to share about the other initiatives with this particular grant and the progress being made. And it's been amazing to see this progress and how it really has made a significant difference when we think about our equity journey and the work that we're doing with our protected population of students. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Martina Wagner, and she's going to be able to share with you an update on our Achievement and Integration Grant. She's worked very closely with many of these initiatives, and I'm thankful for that partnership and the work that she's done to ensure that our students are getting a high quality education. So with that, Dr. Wagner, were you able to, is this your screen that's being shared?
I have
Or
this.
mine?
I'll see it. It's mine.
Okay, great.
Okay, I'm actually starting my timer so that I don't, I want to beat Julie. So I have 10 minutes. I am thankful to be able to present some of the pieces. Like Michelle said, we have many initiatives. We have been afforded the opportunity to, in fact, get the funds, the grant that comes with Achievement and Integration. As we have thought and kind of ideated through last year when we first were told that we were going to have the opportunity to work with Achievement and Integration and really distill down the features that would be pivotal in not only Owatonna, but then just really thinking about our cooperating district, which is Kenyon-Wanamingo. Just as a quick review, the purpose of our ANI really is to satisfy 4 components. The first one is that we have racial and economic integration within the district, as well as with our cooperating district, Kenyon-Wanamingo. We certainly want to look at increasing student achievement. So we'll talk a little bit more about our protected class students and the opportunities that we are trying to afford. With that said, the third piece is equitable educational opportunities. So where have there been gaps? Where have there been opportunities? And so we'll highlight actually 3 of the pieces today that we've seen exponential growth in. And then last but not least, part of the achievement integration is that we are looking at disparities based on students' diverse racial, ethnic, and then economic backgrounds. So just to kind of back up, as we were identified as an ANI district, we had to show a disparity of about 20% of protected class students within Owatonna and our cooperating districts. Protected class is defined by self-reporting ethnicity. So our students of protected class fall into any of the groups represented here. Owatonna is at about 26% students of color. So we're kind of at that tipping point, and you'll see here in this data that I was able to pull from the state report card that we have a nice representation of our Latinx community, 8% from our Black African American. We have a small percentage of American Indian, which I'm sure Michelle has shared with our Title IX, Title VII, Title IX. And then we have many students who are biracial, so they report 2 or more races. So we're a very diverse district. And with that said, we have a protected class of students that we need to afford opportunities similar to their counterparts, our white students within the district. The pillars of achievement and integration fall into 6 categories. So you'll see here, looking at innovative ways to have our learning environments evolve, family engagement, recruitment and retention of protected class or diverse teachers and administrators, equitable access to those types of teachers, college and career readiness, and the rigorous coursework for students who are typically marginalized or underserved. And then last but not least, professional development opportunities to grow not only our district, but our cooperating district of Kenyon-Wanamingo, and working collaboratively back and forth. So this is just kind of a quick review of achievement and integration in its general form. Now in Owatonna and Kenyon-Wanamingo, some pieces that we identified as key strategies include our CLEAR framework that we are going into year 2 of implementation. So I'll be able to share more about that shortly. A portion of my position is also funded through achievement and integration. So we're able to level up a lot of our equity work, not only with myself, but teams that we are able to work with to build site-based equity teams. This year, we've had the opportunity to work with Rachel Bird, our equity coach at OHS. Co-teaching has expanded at the secondary level as well. We have had co-teaching at elementary and middle school, but this year we've been afforded opportunities to look at courses that are typically underrepresented by protected class or by more linguistically diverse learners as well. Our REACH program at OMS has been in place, but with the achievement and integration, we've actually expanded both AVID and REACH, which you may have had some presentations by some of our REACH students, and Katie Wanyas and Matt Scala. The other luxury that we do have is Dr. Maher being able to facilitate a 1-week STEAM enrichment, which we do collaborate across districts with Kenyon Wanamingo. So we offer 1 week middle schoolers being able to come in and work in a STEAM environment. Protected class students are encouraged to attend, so they are afforded the opportunities to work through more of the STEAM curriculum. Rising Scholars, which is our parallel track to gifted and talented, and I do believe Wendy Egermont has shared some of the successes that we're seeing there. The Success Coaches, which was part of our mission moment. This year, we're recalibrated to become advocates. So I'll talk a little bit about how their role has shifted dynamically and the impact that that has had both on parent engagement and student engagement in the district. And then last but not least, a student support specialist. So really looking at the social emotional components of our diverse students, our protected class students, and how to best support them in the district. So lots of strategies that fall into the 6 pillars represented. I want to highlight 3. The first one that we do have is Rachel Bird is our 9-12 equity coach. So she has been pivotal in not only co-teaching at the high school, but also serving as a bridge and a support to teachers and administrators. She's worked closely with our success coaches to really talk about how can we best really break through some of the barriers or pieces that have just been historically misrepresented, I would say, in our K-12 system. So really with the achievement integration, we're looking at this year focusing on how we can take OHS to the next level. And Rachel has been pivotal in that piece. Within her work, we have worked dynamically with CLEAR. So the framework that really takes a mindset and a skill set look and combines these pieces into creating an infrastructure that really helps minimize the marginalized population, but also builds opportunities for teachers to build tools into their toolkit, shift their thinking, look at our students from a more culturally representative way, and then also think about the strategies that are essential in breaking barriers and for students to see themselves represented in our curriculum. So quite a big feat, but within a framework and with a coach, we're able to see some significant gains academically. So you'll be able to see some data in just a moment. With that, talking about CLEAR, last summer we had our first cohort of CLEAR staff members trained, and this is the cohort that we worked with. We did combine OHS and ALC staff as well as Kenyon Wanamingo staff, and so we worked through the CLEAR framework, which actually stands for Culturally and Linguistically Responsive Teaching that we're focusing on for equity and achievement. So the E and the A is really about pulling in our commitments in the district and really equipping teachers to be able to understand our students in the classroom and then shift the culture of the classroom to be representative. So that is our CLEAR training. Rachel has been pivotal in setting up coaching elements and components, a menu, and this is just a sample of the menu of things that teachers can enlist her for support or identify areas or opportunities that they would like to grow themselves. So there's a lot of choice and voice in the coaching components of CLEAR at OHS. With that said, we've been afforded also opportunities to expand our courses at OHS, both for multilingual and protected class students. I want to highlight some of the courses that we've expanded just for this school year. We have more coming next year, but we have a sheltered content economics and political science class. We've opened up co-teaching in both intermediate algebra and geometry standards. We have a co-taught English Language Arts 10 course. We have additionally 25 CLEAR trained staff. So what that does for us is it affords us an opportunity to select teachers who have been trained that we know will provide an entry point for students to feel successful in courses, to be represented both by culture and language. And we'll also work with our coach to be able to dynamically work through some of the common issues that might bubble up, not only in lesson planning, but also in climate creation in classrooms. For next year, we are expanding our social studies sheltered content courses. Our early American history course will be offered in a sheltered content capacity as well as world history. So we're looking a lot at how many of our courses have very dense language need or very dense cultural pieces that need to be worked through or addressed. And we're working with CLEAR to provide a framework to offer those to students. So I'm very excited about the pathways and the tracks that we're able to create at the high school for students to select and be successful. The third piece, again, is our success coaches. So without all of these elements of CLEAR and a 912 equity coach, our success coaches are really extending the reach for our families, our students, our teaching staff, and really our leadership, and really building that equity commitment that we have. So last year, our success coaches, formerly known as liaisons, were traditionally used as interpreters and translators. This year, we've actually shifted them to more of an advocacy role. And so they've become critical in really merging and being the glue to not only our coach, but also our CLEAR infrastructure. So they have been designed to be more of a systemic support as opposed to just having them work one-on-one with students. We actually have now a team that gets together. So our success coaches are part of a team where they're working with a content teacher, a counselor, perhaps a principal or AP, to talk and bridge with our students their academic success. Again, their advocacy skills are critical because now they become partners in learning to home. So they're bridging home to school and school to home. So we are pulling our success coaches in to be more of a dynamic leader or guide with our students, specifically at the high school, to be successful. This does bridge both the social emotional, the relationship aspect of learning with the curricular and achievement pieces. One piece that we worked on this year was actually an infrastructure for our content teachers to understand, when do I actually need an equity coach versus when do I need a success coach? And so this was put together with Phil Wyken and Rachel Bird and myself and success coaches, just to give a clear pathway to teachers to understand what route do I need to take when I need to advocate for a student who may be presenting some struggles within the classroom. So lots of visual supports and processes have been put into place. Now with our success coaches, we've had some opportunities to collect some data this year to see where have we been in terms of impacting multilingual families with engagement. And so I'm proud to say that of our interactions with our listening sessions and just daily logs with family calls and emails and attendance at parent-teacher conferences, we've increased by 10%. So this year, the feedback that we've gotten from families has increased to 85% from last year, which was about 75%. So this is really anecdotal evidence collecting feedback that we have families provide to us at the end of whatever they may be engaging in, listening session, parent-teacher conferences, and so on. The other piece is that we have had a significant increase, about 25% on parent-teacher conferences that have been attended by our protected class families. So a huge increase there. And then we are in the midst of collecting feedback from families based on our success coach support during distance learning, which has been remarkable to say the least. I'm certainly proud of the team and how they have been advocates for families, for teachers, for students, and then really, like I said, biculturating back and forth to help everybody build and bridge. Last piece that I'm excited about is really looking at our CLEAR framework, our CLEAR trained teachers, our equity coach, our success coaches, and then the opportunities and pathways for courses that we've offered is the impact on student achievement. So what I was able to do was collect some data from last year, so 2018-19, and compared it to achievement data from this year. So what you'll see here is just grades. We actually just went in and looked at the failure rates of students. And what you'll see is in 2018-19, the amount of failure rates compared to the amount of A, B's, and C's was significantly less than this year. We grew exponentially. So over 75% of our students actually have shifted from D's and F's in the courses that we have provided them opportunities to have extended support to A, B's, and C's. And so when you're looking at this data, please know that students can have multiple A, B, C's, D's, and F's. And so you need to be thinking about it through the lens of a student who has multiple grades. So I just tried to pull out what are we seeing as trends in the courses that we have been able to offer to our students. So I think I actually went over my time, so Julie probably wins this, but I want to kind of escape out and give you an opportunity to ask questions. That was kind of a lot of information in a short amount of time.
Board members, questions?
I have a couple. Shall I go?
Cool. Yeah.
Well, you're right. It was a tremendous amount of information. It is fascinating and very exciting. So thank you so much. I wish we could go back through it and I could slow you down and ask along the way, but I just have a couple here maybe I'll throw out. Can you remind us the partnership with Kenyon Wanamingo? Why did we do that and how is that going?
It's going well. We have to have a partnership because part of the achievement integration is integration. So we had several districts that we could have partnered with. So Michelle, jump in if I miss any. NHREG, Medford, Waseca, Kenyon Wanamingo, Blooming Prairie, that were considered our surrounding districts that we showed the disparity of 20% of protected class students. There was no way we could have actually accepted the achievement and integration grant if there wasn't a district willing to partner with us. So what we do with Kenyon Wanamingo is we ideate, what are some opportunities for us to grow within the district, and then how do we share some of the learning to actually just grow not only our staff, but opportunities for our students to integrate. Kenyon Wanamingo is a relatively small district, but partnering with Owatonna has proved powerful for them. But we likewise in our STEAM integration that we have in the summer, we're able to take some of our middle school students to, I believe, a local, you have to remind me, Michelle, I think they met at more of a
So we did a 5-day summer or 4-day summer camp with Kenyon Wanamingo students and Owatonna Middle School students. And so 2 days we were in Owatonna, 1 day we were in Kenyon Wanamingo, and then another day we went up to the Bell Museum up in the cities and were able to do activities there. So everything was centered around STEAM activities, highly engaging. We had a total of 75 students between the two schools. So it was a great opportunity for our students to have that enrichment. And as Dr. Regner said, we really, we had to ensure that 50% of our students were students from our protected population. And so specific invites to our protected student population of students went out, and then we opened it up to the rest of the middle school students and a first come, first serve. And it was a free camp. And so I would say that it was within just a couple hours that camp filled up. That's how quickly it filled up for our students. And we had a waiting list of about 70 kids.
Wow.
So it was really a positive kind of event. And then in addition to that, the collaboration has been with also their teachers. Last summer we had teachers, and I know the superintendent as well, that attended CLEAR training as well as our co-teaching training. And then we did some collaboration with our teacher cadet program as well.
Great, thank you. One more quick one. What is sheltered content?
Yep, I knew that one was going to come up, and that's a really good question. So sheltered content is actually designed around a teacher who is both content trained or licensed in a specific area and trained in English language development. So we are afforded an opportunity to have a social studies teacher who's dually licensed. And so the sheltered content strand that you see with social studies is because Karen Martinez does have a dual licensure. So sheltered content brings in protected class students. We look through the EUs and we give the same EUs a standard content class we have, but with the added language supports. So essentially, Karen is able to go through and scaffold. So we may have students who are low-level English language, still taking early American history for next year, for example, or economics, political science, and show significant gains because they have the right language supports. Now, not every student is placed in a sheltered content class. It does require specific levels of language and need, and so it's a case-by-case placement for that.
Thank you.
Any other board members with questions? Martina, really early in your presentation, one of the very first slides had a reference, and did it say economic integration?
Economic for how we work with the reasons for?
Yeah.
Yep, so economic. So essentially, if you think about our free and reduced families, if they're economically disadvantaged, we can also enlist them as protected class into our achievement and integration opportunities.
Thank you. Any other board members with questions? I will pass things back to Mr. Elstad for some closing comments.
Yeah, as you can see, you know, I'm very proud of the results that our team has achieved and really putting just a multitude of interventions in place for our students to reach that. And so I just want to publicly acknowledge Dr. Wagner and the gifts that she brings to our district. Just her leadership and her background has taken this district a long way in 1 year, and we've got a ways to go, and she's going to help us further on that journey. But just hats off to you, Dr. Wagner, and Michelle, obviously, for providing the leadership and systems and structures for Dr. Wagner to take this program and really fly with it.
Thank you. Great report. That is tremendously insightful. Thank you. We're going to move on to item C tonight, which is Cannon Valley Special Education Cooperative. There's an update for us there. Mr. Elstad.
Yeah, so typically once a year, we would like to do an update on the Cannon Valley Special Education Cooperative. And just a quick reminder as to the how that the cooperative supports us as a school district. So we are in a cooperative with Faribault Public Schools, Northfield Public Schools, and Medford Public Schools. And within that framework, there are special populations of students that we all don't have enough students to build our own programs. And so there's a lot of efficiencies drawn from entering into a cooperative. So there are 3 basic programs that the Cannon Valley Special Ed Co-op provides for us. One of them is a program called SUN, which is an acronym for Students with Unique Needs. And again, these are students that may have autism spectrum disorders and really things that require an alternate setting. We also serve our students in the STEP program, which is a transition program for our students that are ages 18 to 21 that are working on life skills and work skills as they prepare for their life beyond the high school setting. And the last one is the ALEX program, which is a Setting 4 program, a federal Setting 4. And these are students that have emotional and behavioral disabilities that require an alternate setting for them and very specialized instruction. And I should say for all 3 of those programs, very specialized instruction. For the Owatonna school system, we do have a number of students that participate. All of these programs, with the exception of one of them, are done in Faribault. Which is a real central location, particularly for Northfield and Owatonna. Right now, the Students with Unique Needs program is housed in Northfield. And so again, these are specialized programs that we certainly could not provide here in Owatonna at the same expense. So there's a financial win for us within that, but it's also just a real solid program for our students with very specialized instruction. And so there's a couple of things happening with that. One of them is a change in leadership for the Cannon Valley Special Education Cooperative. And I'm going to turn it over here to Jolene in just a minute, but Jolene Mose is the board chair for the Cannon Valley Special Ed Co-op and is a representative of the Owatonna board to that cooperative board. And a couple things, there's a change in leadership. And so recently, Lynn Krominga, who was the director of services and executive director for SEVSEC, has stepped down and is moving on to a new position. And the board recently offered the position to Sarah McGuire, who actually is an Owatonna product. She is one of our special education supervisors and will absolutely serve the cooperative in a positive way moving forward. So that's one change coming. The next change is really looking at kind of as this program started, and I think we're now in year 4 with the cooperative. But as the program has evolved, so have the needs of the students, and so has the space needs that are needed for that program. And so within that, the program itself started in whatever place could be found. In fact, I'll tell you right now that the SUN program in Northfield is run in one of the buildings that is accompanied next to the Laura Baker School in Northfield, which is a very specialized sort of residential facility. The lease at the Laura Baker School has become expensive for us. And so that was one reason we're going to look at consolidating, and I'll have Jolene and Amanda actually comment on that in just a bit. But also within that, the ALEX program is run at a building in Faribault that is, if you're familiar with the old depot, where the old depot used to be, it's real close to there. And then lastly, the program that is housing STEP is actually in a warehouse for, that is used by an area plumber or electrician. And that facility itself is causing some challenges as well. So as the cooperative evolves and changes, the needs of the students are changing, which also then as 4 districts together we have to start examining what those needs will be moving forward. And so the last thing is really the SEBSEC has proposed a project where they would consolidate all of their services, all 3 programs, into one site. You may have read recently about the Cannon Valley Special Ed Cooperative looking at utilizing the old J.C. Penney building and what used to be the Faribault West Mall. And that space itself would be able to accommodate all 3 programs and draw some real efficiencies for all of the districts. One being for Owatonna specifically, that the transportation costs of driving kids to Northfield can get cumbersome and expensive, but again, reducing the amount of travel time for our students to go to a centralized location of Faribault would be advantageous. So I've given a real brief overview, and I guess at this point I would turn it over to Board Member Mose if you want to share any thoughts that you have, Jolene, about the co-op itself.
Thank you, Mr. Elstead. You did a great job articulating, so there's not much more for me to add. But just looking forward at what this program has to offer, specifically Owatonna students, all students, but my lens naturally bends towards Owatonna. I think it's an exciting time to bring in some new leadership, to put some vision into some new spacing that again will create some financial efficiencies as well as some administrative efficiencies and additional support for students and staff.
Thank you. At this point, one of the things, as we mentioned, as they acquire facilities, the 4 districts together are able to access lease levy in order to make sure that we are can supply the right spaces that are needed for the specialized instruction. And so I'm going to turn it over to Amanda Heilman because she has been working with the other business managers and directors from the other districts to identify what that lease levy would look like for Owatonna. And the other thing I would share with you is perhaps, Amanda, when doing that, you could share what replacement costs would be potentially for us if we were to run those programs in Owatonna. But then furthermore, what the potential savings might be by consolidating those into one facility. You're there, Amanda, correct?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. There must have been a little lag there. I apologize. Did you hear my introduction of you? Yes?
Sorry, I'm in my office and I'm in.
Yeah, just for reference with some of the other board members and attendees, we don't always have the greatest connectivity at the current district office. And so she's probably fighting through some of those. But Amanda, are you able to connect with us now? I think Amanda will probably go out and come back in. Let me just, in the meantime, while she is managing that part of it, I want to talk a little bit about, I'll save some of the topic around just consolidating. And if we were to replicate those services in Owatonna, it annually would cost us at least 1.5 and up to $2 million to replicate those services. Obviously, with sharing in a cooperative, those costs are drastically reduced for us. So a cooperative really makes sense for some of our special populations. The other part I would say, and again, Amanda, are you back into the meeting by chance? Okay, she's not here. I apologize. She's going to share for you the lease levy information. So we'll maybe get to that and come back to it. But the other part I wanted to add into it is just when we look at, the efficiencies that are drawn again from this, one of them is staffing. And so if you can think about 3 separate locations and the staffing that's necessary to do so, one of which is a specialized, you stepped into Daniel.
I'll just step into Danielle's office. I'm not sure what's happening. Sorry about that. So just to kind of talk about what would happen if we consolidate into one location is essentially what our goal is. So what that would entail is we'd obviously have to enter into a little bit of an extra lease levy. So our lease levy would go up about $120,000 a year to consolidate every program into one site. But as Jolene mentioned earlier, there are going to be some estimated savings that come on the backside of that with some reduction in administrative services. So in all, we're estimating a savings of merging all 3 of those locations of about $500,000, which would include things like 1 less admin assistant and 1 less coordinator, some technology savings, some reduction in EAs, reduction in cleaning services, phones, things like that. So essentially where that $500,000 savings would come from is we would just have less tuition billing that would come out from the co-op for each of our students as we consolidate and merge those programs together and make them more cost efficient.
One other thing I would add is later in the meeting, you are going to be asked to consider some action for that lease levy. What the cooperative is looking for from all of the 4 respective boards is the opportunity to move forward on the project to further consolidate those resources, as Amanda indicated. And so again, part of our presentation was to give you a general update about the cooperative itself and the programming that's there, but also prefacing an upcoming action item that you'll be considering later on in our meeting tonight. At this point, I would open up to questions that board members have regarding the cooperative or and again, we can identify the question later in the meeting about lease levy, but open it up at this point for questions.
Mark, I have one question. So Amanda, just wanted to clarify, it was kind of one of your last statements, and I think I understood, but when you mentioned the 120,000 per year savings, that was an Owatonna savings, right, to our district?
So
Or to the program as a whole? Or
the $120,000 I mentioned was the increased lease levy cost because we're going to be building out that space.
And that's to our district?
Correct. Correct.
And then-
That's just for the Owatonna district.
And then the $500 savings, was that also a direct savings to the district here in Owatonna? Or is that across all 4?
Across all 4. So it'd be a $500,000 reduction that would get spread out amongst all of the co-op members, and then obviously would just be spread out through tuition billing.
Right.
And the only thing I would add, if I might, to that response is because Owatonna is a large user of the cooperative because of the size, we are the largest district in the cooperative. If you think about that $500,000, the piece of pie, if you will, of savings for Owatonna of that $500,000 would be more just because of our size, the number of students that access the services.
Right.
Yeah, right now we have 37% of the students.
Okay, yep, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other board members with questions? As Mr. Elstead mentioned, we're going to, we'll vote on this in action items in just a couple of minutes. With that, any other, do you have any other closing comments that you'd like to make with regard to this?
I
Okay.
do not, thank you.
And one last opportunity. Anybody have any questions? Okay, hearing none, we'll continue to move on. There's one more item here in reports tonight, which would be the American Indian education, that being the vote of concurrence. I'll turn it over to Mr. Elstead for some opening remarks.
Thank you, Chair Sebring. This is an item that is relatively new to our district. As you saw from the demographic slide that Dr. Wagner shared previously, we do have a very small percentage of families that have self-identified themselves as American Indian. And so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Michelle because there are some pieces now that we need to follow in order to make sure we're in compliance with the Department of Education requirements.
Thank you, Mr. Alsted. As you heard from Dr. Wagner, we value the importance of hearing from all of our families. We've engaged in many listening sessions throughout the last few years to really gather their feedback and their input. And our American Indian population is no different. One of the things that we've done the last 2 years is have an annual meeting and really taking that opportunity to really be able to share information about the education that we're providing in Owatonna Public Schools in general, and then specifically as it relates to our American Indian population and the needs that they might have. And so during that meeting, we always gather feedback and input. We have opportunities to ask questions and really understand any needs that they may have. And so as part of the state statute, we need to do that, but we do that anyway because it's important to us. As part of state statute, we need to have one of our one of the parents be a chair of this committee, and Leanne Jim is one of our parents, and she has attended all of our meetings and really has been great to hear the feedback from her. And so one of the components from MDE is that we need to hold a vote of concurrence, indicating that our students of American Indian are feeling that their parents are feeling that their Owatonna Public Schools is providing a quality education for them. And so I'm pleased and proud to announce that we have a positive vote of concurrence from American Indian families. And we will file that paperwork with the Minnesota Department of Education per statute starting tomorrow. So any questions on the vote of concurrence? Thank you very much.
Thank you. It does not appear as though there are any questions. Thank you. We will move on. Item 7 tonight would be general information. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Elstad with regard to the enrollment report or anything contained therein? Okay. We will move on to item 8, discussion items, no action required, the board forum. I will, as I see you on my screen, Jolene, anything for board forum tonight? No? Tim, anything for board forum?
Nothing for me.
Okay. Logan?
Nope. Sorry I was late. I was outside
That's
enjoying the beautiful weather.
There you go. Christina, anything for board forum?
Nope, nothing today.
Okay. Nikki?
Nothing.
How about you, Eric?
Nothing tonight.
Okay. Lori?
Nope.
I have a couple of quick items for all of you. I had contacted and reached out to each of you with regard to that end of June meeting, the one that would be normally scheduled for June 22nd, and asked if it would be okay if we switched it to the 29th. Tim would be the only person that would not be able to attend that meeting, and have just double checked with Tim to see if it would be all right if we just continued on with that plan. So we'll get the communication out to all of you with regard to that date change. So we'll move it from Monday the 22nd to Monday the 29th. Second thing, and I'm doing this as a tweak to Mr. Elstad, just as a quick reminder. In your board packet, there was in the administrative report a request for some board assistance at graduation time. So I'll ask him to make sure that he touches on that. And if it's we don't know yet, well, we don't know yet. And the third item, our first meeting in June, which would be on June 8th. Hopefully, if we can get everyone back together again, we're looking at and we're exploring the possibility of having that meeting held at the middle school in that common area. So there would be plenty of space and we could carefully and safely socially distance in there. But we'll still, we'll just keep working away at this to see if we can make that happen. A couple of other moving parts to get it done, but that would be the meeting where we start to hear more about the work that has been done with the new high school. And so it would be nice to see and hear all of that in person. So with that, one last time, anybody have anything to add with regard to board forum? Hearing none, I'm going to turn things over to Mr. Elstad for the administrative report.
Thank you. So I just have a couple of quick items tonight that I wanted to comment on, one of which is Chair Sebring alluded to, which is graduation. As a lot of you have seen in the administrative report, or all of you have seen, Corey Kath, our high school principal, laid out a clear process as to how we are going to conduct graduation in Owatonna. It is within the parameters that the Department of Education and Department of Health will allow. So it will be the first, and maybe we hope the only drive-in graduation for Owatonna High School. So just to give you a quick update as to how that will progress and how you as board members can participate. I think there were a few of you that had been identified before to participate as you normally would have in the graduation ceremony. And I believe Christina was one of them. Not if Christina, if you were one of them this year that was going to participate, is that correct? Looks like your camera kind of froze up. Christina, were you going to participate?
Yes.
She is. I didn't hear her response. I'm so sorry. And I believe Chair Sebring was one. And then did we have a third that was going to participate this year that we know of that I just missed on my list? Okay, so it might have been just the two of you. Okay, thank you. So the plan right now is in the morning, Corey Kath has worked with the Steele County Fairgrounds staff to identify the foundation building that will be used for taking photographs starting at about 9 o'clock. He laid this out alphabetically so that we don't have everyone there at one time, so that we can have some logistic balance with it. And so what we'll be doing is allowing the graduate to safely get their diploma jacket, as well as then one of us dressed in our robes would be there. And the way that the photographers will set it up is it'll look as if we're standing next to them, but we will be socially distanced while we hand the diploma to them. And then again, those are all of the photos and things that will be taken, because in our typical ceremony, Mike Oldenburg would have taken photos of the graduates as they walked across the stage. That's not feasible. So Corey Kath has come up with a different way to accomplish that. And then as we proceed into the day at 2 o'clock, we will be using the parking lot of the Alti Annexstad building on the Federated South Campus. There are about approximately 400 parking stalls there. And within that site, the students will be allowed to have one car per family. And they'll come in. We are allowing driver's side windows to open up. Again, we're being cognizant of the spaces being close together. And again, he listed all of the senior parents, myself being one, received the information last week. At 2 o'clock, the ceremony will start. Mr. Kath will welcome everyone to the ceremony. We do have 2 student speakers, I believe, that are planned to speak at the commencement, and they will be using a stage area. The graduation ceremony itself will be simulcast on KOWZ as well as KRFO, AM/FM, whichever one you prefer. And Scott Lindbergh from Lindbergh Productions will be doing a live stream on Owatonna Live so that other family members can partake as well that may not be able to be there in person. And then he will be offering an opportunity for parents to purchase a copy of that should they so choose using the Owatonna Live website. Once the student speakers and everyone have done their piece, as would be the case, Mr. Kath will present the class of 2020 to Owatonna. And at that point, the ceremony will be done. Again, one of the expectations from Governor Walz is that the ceremonies are brief. All of the names will be read. And so we'll be taking care of everything we typically would, other than the people won't be sitting in the stands at the Four Seasons. They'll be in their car listening to it on the radio as well as what they can see. So again, those are our graduation plans. I do want to just publicly acknowledge Mr. Kath and his staff for really being student-centered in their decisions. So when the kind of ruling came from Governor Walz about what things were in play, the first thing, as I would expect from Mr. Kath, is he went to his seniors and said, here are the things we can do. What would you like? Because this is your ceremony. And of course, they chose to have the drive-up ceremony. Out of all of the ceremonies that I believe I'll have ever participated in and will participate in the future, this may be one of the most memorable ones for certain, based upon the situation we're in. So I'm very pleased and happy that Mr. Kath and his staff were able to facilitate that. And we are celebrating with a whole day of celebration for our seniors. So Logan, I'm looking for that smile on your face. We're going to appreciate you. We do all the time. Yeah, there you go. But certainly for that day, we're going to really appreciate our class of 2020. And then lastly, just a quick legislative update. There's really nothing to update you with. As you followed within the reports that came out, their session ended Sunday evening at midnight. There was really nothing decided. In fact, they left both houses without a bill that was settled. There is an apparent special session coming back. We believe that the special session will be to finalize some of the COVID legislation and financial markers that were put out there. We do not believe that there will be any movement within the education parts. So again, we don't believe there will be any legislative update. And so at this point, we believe the books are kind of closed as we move into, again, what will be the legislative session for 2021. Just a quick reminder that this is not a funding year for the legislature for school districts. This is a policy year, but there were no policies established as well. So again, there could be something coming in a special session, but not likely. But that's the quick and very short legislative update.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Elstead. Board members, any questions? Okay, hearing none. We will move on with our agenda. Next up, item 9 would be the consent agenda. Once again, the reminder is we're approving the minutes from April 27th, the disbursement and the personnel report. Does anybody have any reason to believe that we need to pull any item out? Okay, hearing none. Just to make things easy, I'll make the motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Eric has the second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Eric, would you do the roll call vote, please?
Certainly. Nikki?
Aye.
Jolene?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Christina?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Lori?
Sorry, I.
And I myself is an aye. Pass 7-0.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item 10 tonight, a couple of items for board action. The first item would be what is called the identified official with authority to authorize user access to MDE secure websites. Mr. Elstad, you can help us understand that.
Yes, this actually is an annual piece that the board is asked to do. We call it the Iowa here, but it's an acronym for the individual with authority to authorize. And what you are approving tonight basically offers us the opportunity to access secure websites that are only for school district personnel with various reports and things, as well as special permissions to see finances and so on within our district. So again, this is an annual ask of our school board to approve the identified official with authority.
Board members, any questions on that? Okay, hearing none. I will move that the board authorize Jeffrey Elstad to act as the identified official with authority for Owatonna Public School District 0761-01.
Second.
Eric has the second. Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Eric, would you do the roll call vote, please?
Certainly. Nikki?
Aye.
Jolene?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Christina?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
And I myself is an aye. Pass 7-0.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item B is called distance learning grading practices. Mr. Elstad.
As part of the pandemic response as a school district, we have obviously had to adjust our grading practices. Michelle Krell again has been busy at work looking at how we might identify the best way for us to recognize students for their work during a time when there may have been inequities available or things that beyond students' concern. And so I want to turn it over to Michelle to just walk through some of the overview of the distance learning grading practices. Just as a quick reminder, this is something that was asked as per the order from the governor that the school boards adopt so that we know during this time and during this time only that these grading practices would be allowable.
Thank you, Mr. Elstad.
So MDE came out with guidelines to help guide districts based on how we can adjust our grading. As Mr. Alstott said, there were obviously a lot of inequities. We know that when we have students within the four walls of our school, we're able to control a lot more than we are when they're not with us. And so some of the grading policies and practices that we put into place really go along with some guidelines that were given by MDE and the many experts around the country. And one of the things that we really focused in on, some core beliefs, are grace should be considered in all situations with all students. And so students should be held harmless in the spring for spring grades. In other words, they should not receive worse grades than they already were on track to receive during the distance learning time. And then obviously no retentions, and that particularly is at our elementary level. And so elementary grading practices, we really looked at the fact that we recognize that our teachers and our students have been doing very much hands-on, innovative kind of activities, but most of the time we're unable to really assess whether or not the students have gained the skills that we typically have done in a regular classroom setting. And so being able to look potentially at the grades and reverting back to where students were at third quarter. And then if we're not feeling like we can give a grade, then giving an NA for not assessed for the elementary. At our middle level, we looked at grading for the fourth quarter and really looking at doing a pass, no credit for students. We analyzed, like I said, lots of different grading practices and then tried to fit everything within the guidelines of MDE. And so the grading document really spells out exactly all the different nuances of grading at our middle level. And then at our high school level, that's where really we recognize that high school grades are a lot more high stakes than maybe our middle school and elementary grades. And so a lot of time, energy, and effort was put into this. I think that there was a lot of uncertainty about the impact of grades, because grades for our high school students obviously impact GPA, college admissions, NCAA eligibility, scholarships, just a plethora of things. So we really had to navigate the high school situation. And so what we decided to do was go with an ABC, a pass, and a no credit. So those are the 4 grading options. According to MDE guidelines, and failing an F was not something that we were allowed to give. And we agree with that wholeheartedly, because certainly we know that an F impacts GPA. We also know that a D impacts GPA. And so when we consider, we did consider a pass, no credit, but a pass, no credit had implications when we come to NCAA and, like I said, college admissions, because a pass in the college world is considered a D if we were to equate that to grading. So there were a lot of nuances that we really needed to work through. And so that's why we landed, we felt our students, many of our students really want to continue with a letter grade system. And so how could we be fair and equitable with that? So we did land on an ABC, pass, and no credit. The no credit, our teachers have been working tirelessly with students that currently are at the no credit phase at our high school. And if in serious consideration has to be made if we're giving a no credit to a student, I think we're really working hard to really get students past that finish line. And so teachers, as you know, we're stopping all of our distance learning, no new distance learning as of this Friday. Next week and the following week is really time for our students who need additional support, interventions, so that we can get all of those students that might be at that no credit phase beyond that. And so that was the impact of the high school grading. And then obviously we recognize that there are things that we have not maybe covered or covered to the extent that we need to. So we're working with teachers right now to identify the content and the standards that maybe need additional work going into next fall, and really being planful and mindful on what those needs are moving into the fall. In addition, one last caveat that the Minnesota Department of Education has said is that all report cards and transcripts need to communicate the fact that grading during this period of time from March until now really has been during this distance learning period, and that these grades should not be held against a student for anything moving forward. So there's an exact paragraph that we'll be putting on all of our report cards and our transcripts, so that if anybody were to look at that in a few years, they're able to see that that was an unprecedented time, and we were educating students through distance learning. Any questions about the grading procedures?
Board members, a lot of moving parts there. Questions? Okay, hearing none. I move that the board approve the distance learning grading practices for spring 2020 as described in the attachment.
Second.
Get it, Sarah? Okay. Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Eric, would you do the roll call vote?
Certainly. Nikki,
Aye.
Jelaine,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Christina,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
and I myself is an aye. Pass 7-0.
Motion carries. Thank you. Item C tonight is the school calendar adjustment for calendar year 2019-20. Mr. Elstad.
Yeah, again, at the end of every school year, we realize any snow days that we may have had during the year. Obviously, this is a much different calendar than any of us anticipated. In fact, when I was looking at this agenda item, we did have one snow day this year, and that was February 13th. It seems like that was 300 years ago at this point, but it was just a few months ago. But again, it's also recognizing that March 17, 18, and 19 were days that were canceled that were considered part of the pandemic response and in preparation for distance learning. In addition, May 1st and 4th looked a bit different on your calendars, although those are counted as student contact days. We just need to recognize that there was no distance learning on those days. And that's part of Executive Order 20-41 that Governor Walz issued regarding distance learning and making those 2 days mandatory days of preparation for teachers so that they could prepare for the last leg of the journey with distance learning. At this point, I would stand for questions if any board members have them.
Questions, anyone?
Jeff, just a quick clarification. I think we've discussed this, or I asked you before. Obviously, we have sufficient numbers of student contact days, right? It doesn't impact in any way our budget or funding or any of those issues.
No, that's correct. We have met the specifications for funding, and we were very careful in how we planned out, especially the end of our school year as well, to make sure that we met those requirements. But yeah, we've met all of those to achieve the maximum funding that we can get.
Any other questions? Okay. I move that the board approve the revision in the 2019-2020 school calendar, removing February 13, March 17, 18, and 19, and May 1 and 4 as school days.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Eric, roll call.
Yep. Nikki,
Aye.
Jelaine,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Christina,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
and I myself is an aye. 7-0 pass.
Motion carries. Thank you. Item D tonight, lease levy for Cannon Valley Special Education Cooperative, which we heard about earlier. One last time, Mr. Elstad, any last comments on that?
I don't have any additional comments unless there were further questions that the board had regarding what they're being asked to consider tonight.
Board members, any last questions? With that, I move that the board approve the revision. No, I already did that one. I move that the board approve the Cannon Valley Special Education Cooperative Project as presented.
Second.
Has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Eric, would you do the roll call vote, please?
Certainly. Nikki,
Aye.
Jolene,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Christina,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
and I myself is an aye. 7-0 pass.
Motion carries. Thank you. Last item tonight, item E, gifts to the district. Mr. Elstad.
Yeah, there are two gifts tonight. One is from a gift from a family, again, to help us with some of the negative lunch balances. And the other gift tonight is actually a gift that's coming from a unique source. So the Toys for Tots Foundation is actually operated by the United States Marine Corps. And in light of the pandemic and the fact that they were fearful that students would not have access to library books, they donated 165 books to our community. And we are dispersing those out to our elementary children, again, to try to put books in their hands that they can keep. And so I thought that was kind of a unique gift and certainly one that we want to recognize tonight.
Very nice to hear. Board members, any comments? With that, I move that the board approve the resolution for acceptance of gifts as presented.
Second.
Got it? Motion has been made and seconded. Any further conversation? Hearing none. One last time, Eric.
Yep. Nikki,
Aye.
Jolene,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Christina,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
and I myself is an aye. 7-0 vote for
Motion
pass.
carries. Thank you very much. A lot of information packed into this meeting tonight. Thanks for all of your help and your patience, board members. I will move that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. One last time, Eric, roll call vote.
Nikki,
Aye.
Jolene,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Christina,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
and I myself is an aye. So 7-0 vote to pass. The
Motion
adjourned
carries.
open meeting.
Thank you. That draws to a close our regular meeting. And with that, I'm going to, we'll call it 7 o'clock and we will move directly into the work session. I'll call this meeting to order. Eric, if you would, please, a roll call
Yep.
vote.
Nikki,
Here.
Jolene,
Here.
Mark,
Here.
Christina,
Here.
Tim,
Here.
Lori,
Here.
Logan,
Here.
and I myself's here. All present.
We are all present. First up tonight would just simply be to approve the agenda for this work session. There are 2 items that we need to hear about.
So moved.
Entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Eric, if you would please, roll call vote.
Yep. Nikki,
Aye.
Jolene,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Christina,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
and I myself is an aye. 7-0 pass.
Motion carries. Thank you. These are items that are for discussion. There's nothing that we're going to take action on here tonight. But the first item would be just an update from Mr. Elstad regarding the district pandemic response.
Yeah, I'm going to just try to use some brevity with this topic tonight. This has been one that we've had on nearly every board agenda, just to talk about how we continue to serve our students and families through this unprecedented time. So one of the things that you approved tonight is our grading practices. We have an email or a communication that will be going out to all of our parents tomorrow, really talking about grading as well as a device collection. If you remember, we quickly deployed about 2,500 devices out to families that needed them, as well as what we call hotspots, which are internet access capability for our students that didn't have it previously. And so we were able to connect with all of our families, and that's just a Herculean effort to do so. But now the cleanup comes when we have to collect all those devices, bring them back in, sanitize them, and get them ready for whatever the next leg of our journey will hold, whether that's doing distance learning again in the fall or something therein. And I will comment about some thoughts around that a little later. So again, that communication will be going out tomorrow. We're also going to be just recapping the end of year procedures. As Michelle indicated, tomorrow is our last day of new distance learning for students, allowing for the last 2 weeks of school to really incorporate interventions and some credit catch up for our high school students and ALC students in particular, as well as an opportunity for us to have what we consider to be the best year ending we can have with our students. And so if on any typical year you would have field trips and you might have end of year school celebrations, we're doing all of those, we're just doing them virtually. And so the teaching and learning team has created an entire spreadsheet of virtual field trips that classes can take. And I hope that our students take part in that. In fact, we aren't typically able to send our students to the Rocky Mountain National Park Zoo, but I do think now that will be an option for some of our students, as well as taking oceanography, trips across the world. And again, just hats off to our teaching and learning department that have really prepared the best we can do for our students to really enjoy some of those end of year things. They're also doing end of year picnics and celebrations. And so again, that will be just recommunicated with our families again tomorrow. Just a couple of other quick comments. To date, I am proud to say that we have served our students 76,600 meals during this time of distance learning. Again, our student nutrition staff and Amanda and our partnership with the bus company have made this all possible. We will continue to serve meals. In fact, tomorrow is one of our distribution days, and we'll continue. Again, there was a slight edit because of Memorial Day next week. We will be serving and doing those distributing of meals on both Tuesday and Thursday next week, as well as the following Monday and Thursday, the 1st and 4th of June. The 4th of June will conclude our meal distribution as it sits right now. But we do have 3 summer sites that will continue to serve meals for our students. And those include McKinley Elementary, Owatonna Middle School, as well as the public library. And we have done that traditionally in the past, offered meals at those sites, and we will continue to do so all summer long. And so that's a quick update there. Childcare, Deb McDermott Johnson and her staff have been providing childcare and distance learning for our students, particularly those that are children of our emergency and essential workers in the community. We're averaging about 25 students a day. We've seen a little uptick in that lately as more and more people are going back to work. So we are proud to serve in those capacities and I'm going to continue to do so. And I'm very proud of our staff and the way that they've responded and just built systems to continue to support our students and families. As we look ahead, we've been given some guidance around summer programs, and what I would say, there is a caveat to summer programming because it appears that the guidance is still changing day by day from the department. As I'm looking at my colleague Michelle on the screen, we just received some updated guidance again today about summer school. This is what we know as of today. And again, that could change, but we're really looking to provide, we were given the guidance that we can continue to provide distance learning, or we could use a hybrid approach. Within that, we've been given some leniency about allowing some students back into the building with a very careful protocol about how we introduce students into our sites. We've been given the direction that we can have no more than 9 students in any given classroom, which means that we're falling under the ratio of 10 or less, which is what the governor's order insisted upon last week. Within that, we offer 4 basic summer programs. We offer extended school year, which is a product of our special education department. And again, we're exploring the best way for us to offer those services to the students that recognize a need during the summer. We also offer targeted services, and that really looks for our students in grades 1 through 8. Those are students that may have struggled in particular areas or content areas and topics throughout the school year. They are teacher identified and they meet criteria. That program could be offered as both distance learning and hybrid. We're exploring the surveying students and staff right now as to the number of students that may partake in that program, as well as the number of staff that we can hire to provide those services. And again, with a pandemic, it doesn't just hit adults, it also hits our students. And so those are both considerations that we're making. We also offer a very robust migrant education program for not only Owatonna, but also the Waseca Public Schools that join with us. That program has some clear jurisdiction around it this summer. We cannot offer that as a face-to-face opportunity. So we're having to look at a distance learning model for our migrant students. We will be providing meals to our students as well. So again, we're looking at providing all of those programs as best we can within the parameters that we've been given. The last of which is credit recovery, and that is a priority for us. These are high school and ALC students that are in process of gaining credit toward graduation. Some way, shape, or form, they weren't able to complete those courses. And so we typically offer this program, and we will continue to do so. That program will be run in two different ways. The first of which is if students need to take a complete course over again, they'll be utilizing our ALC program and working with our online distance learning to complete the course. As Michelle mentioned, we may have some high school students that will require maybe not an entire course, but to satisfy some of the standards towards graduation to get the credit for the course. And they'll be working with Mr. Kath and a few of his staff members to accomplish that through our credit recovery program. So that's what summer programs look like from an academic standpoint. I would also add that we have been given clearance to offer our summer school age care program. At last count, we had about 60 families that were interested, and that's typically what we've served in Owatonna. We are looking at relocating that to McKinley just because we also need to follow the safe distancing protocols with having 1 per 9, no more than 9 students in a given area. So again, we're working through all of those. We have protocols for pre-assessment and pre-screening for our students when they enter the building. We're working through what that looks like and providing the protective equipment necessary for our staff and students if needed. So again, we're exploring all of those things. We'll have a little more update for you probably at our work session on June 8th, just as an update. The other thing that we're now learning from both the Department of Health as well as the Minnesota Youth Sports Commission is that they're looking at a way for us to reopen some of our summer facilities, or excuse me, facilities within our district for summer programming. We're taking that very carefully because it's a new phase for us. Again, it requires all of the protocols that are in place. We're in a phase right now where there can be no sharing of implements. So I'll use basketball as an example. There's no 1-on-1, there's no 3-on-3, there's no 5-on-5. It would be a person shooting in a gymnasium. I think we can allow up to a pod of 10 or 2 pods of 10 in a gymnasium. So again, Mr. Ochterkirk is working with our coaching staff from the various programs about what that looks like and whether or not that's feasible for those programs. Within that, we're also looking at our weight room facility and how we might best utilize that, as well as, of course, outdoor programs. And we are fully cooperating with city and county officials in that and partnering with them so that we open up in a very smart way together so that we're making sure that one isn't doing something more than the others so that there's no competition there. It's a complete partnership between our city and county colleagues. So that's a very quick overview of the things and how we're responding. We continue to learn daily through this. I've been asked the question about what next fall will look like probably 1,000 times. And all I can say is my best answer is we don't know. We think that there's going to be some sort of opportunity for us to have students back in the building. A lot of things can change by the day and by the week. And we hope that in a couple months, we maybe can move to a different phase. We just don't know. So again, that's why you'll be updated pretty regularly throughout the summer as to information, how it comes in and how we might best respond to the district. And again, through all of it, we remain committed to serving our families and students the best ways that we can. So that's a quick update with our pandemic response. And at this point, I would open up for questions that board members may have.
I have a question. So in regards to summer SAC, with the requirements of 1 to 9, would that increase any cost to SAC participation, since I imagine that would increase some of our costs?
It will, and Amanda probably has a better number than I, but we do know that there will be some increased costs with that. We have typically tried to run our summer SAC program as sort of a self-sufficient financial program where they basically generate enough revenue to support the staff that are there. It's a service that we provided. It's a service that's needed, and so we do see it, but it'll not be a break-even proposition for us, but I think we'll eliminate some of the losses based upon how we cleverly staff that. But again, I don't know if Amanda, you have any follow-up with that financially about our summer SAC program?
Yeah, just a tiny bit. I mean, I don't have exact numbers. We're kind of roughly estimating, between, maybe $10,000 and $15,000 that we would see as a deficit, maybe a little bit more than that, depending on how many students we get in and how many, with that 1-to-9 ratio, how many staff members we have to hire on for that to take care of that.
The other thing I would add with that, Nikki, is Summer SAC has been a program that's helped augment to our childcare programs within the city, our local, our privatized daycare and so on. Without providing that, we overburden some of our localized daycares. And so we also see it as a service to our community. And even though it's not going to be the break-even proposition, it's the least we can do to try to make sure that we're at least balancing out childcare opportunities for families.
Okay. And I have an additional question regarding summer programming. So with the return of computers and other stuff, since there's no finalized direction, I imagine, with summer programming, will there then have to be a redistribution of resources later once that's all finalized?
Yeah. So what we're looking at right now is that the students that would be part of our targeted services program, our ESY program, our migrant program, and credit recovery, if technology is something that the family has expressed a need for, we would have to have some sort of a way to either have them come in if we're doing a hybrid approach where they're able to attend at least on an alternating day basis, so we could distribute at that point. Or we would have to distribute those out to families or offer them for pickup if needed. And so once we really arrive at kind of the best formula for us, if you will, to offer those summer programs, for those students that do need technology, we will have to redeploy those.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Lori, did you have a question?
Well, I was just going to make a comment. I maybe have to defer to Amanda, but it seems to me, this is just off my recollection, but to Nikki's first point, this the community ed department and that balance has been quite healthy in the last few years. It seemed to me there was room to kind of absorb potentially some losses or some over expenses we might incur this summer as it relates to the summer SAC program that Nikki was talking about. Is that accurate, or do you have any insight there?
Yeah, that's accurate. We do have a healthy fund balance in our community ed fund. So we will be able to absorb some of those losses, but obviously recognizing that without, the COVID-19 happening, obviously those losses wouldn't have occurred. So yes, we do have some room to absorb. And there's also going to be some CARES Act funding that we will be getting as districts. So right now our district's estimated to have about $624,000 coming in for that to help us offset some of the emergency care costs, our technology costs that we've incurred, as well as the meal losses that we've incurred because we aren't having revenue coming in for meals and for those emergency care services like we had been before with those programs.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. Let's move on. Item B tonight is the financial outlook and projections. Amanda is up and queued up and ready to go. Mr. Elstead, you want to preface this?
I will. So the next leg of our journey here, talking about financial outlook and projections, I would just add a couple of introductory comments, then turn it completely over to Amanda so that she can show you some of the work that we have been doing and planning. The school district has delivered on a promise. In 2013, we passed an operating levy, which again, just to be clear for people that don't always understand, Operating levies are those that support the teaching and learning aspects and the actual operations of the district. The bond and you know, thankfully our community passed a bond last year as well as in 2015, but those bonds really only support buildings and facilities. They do not support operating levies. So back to my previous comment, in 2013, we entered into an agreement with the community that we were going to pass an operating levy that will last 7 years. We're at the end of that 7 years, and so we've delivered on a promise to the community that we would not be asking for any additional operating funds during that course of time. Reaching the end of it though, the board has to take a look at some considerations about what our financial projections look like as a school district, but furthermore, what some options are responsibly to make sure that we are providing the best education we can for our students. And so with that introduction, I will turn it over to Amanda so she can share more.
All right, can everyone see my screen? Good, okay, good. All right, so tonight, as Jeff mentioned, we wanted to walk through where we are at currently, our current financial outlook. I want to talk a little bit about some funding challenges that we have as school districts across the state, and then talk about some potential solutions as we move forward into the future so that we can maintain that financial stability that we've had since we passed our last levy. As we all know, our current operating levy expires in June 30th of 2021. So what that means for us as a school district is we will have to go out for at least a renewal this November on the ballot in order to make sure that we keep our voter approved portion of our levy for that 2021-22 school year. If we do not pass a renewal in November this fall, we will lose $483 per pupil unit, which is our voter approved portion of our operating levy. And this equates to around $2.6 million per year that we would lose if we do not get a renewal. As Jeff mentioned earlier, when we passed our levy in November 2013, the plan was to maintain a positive fund balance through June 30th of 2021. And we are keeping this promise to our community. You know, in our financial planning throughout the years, throughout this 7-year period, we have estimated that we would be exactly where we're going to end up at the end of this fiscal year and maintaining those positive fund balance as we go through 21. So we are keeping those promises to our community. And as we anticipated, we are budgeting to fall a little bit below our board unassigned fund balance target at the end of this fiscal year. But as I mentioned, that was part of our planning process and was expected as we went throughout this 7-year levy period. And also, as we continue to know, education in Minnesota continues to be underfunded by the state and federal government. And as we move forward, we obviously know the new budget forecast came out from the state, and we're looking at about a $2.4 billion deficit. So as we move forward, we know that we may not see increases in our basic formula through the state. And so we may have some additional funding challenges ahead of us that we have to weather through as well. Here you can see this is what we approved. You approved as a board in February for our final revised budget for the fiscal year 20 school year. So as you can see, that unassigned fund balance is planned to dip about around that 6% percentage range, which, like I said, your unassigned fund balance target for the board is that 8 to 10% range. And as we can see, going out through 2021, the end of our levy period, we're going to be estimated to be around a 5% unassigned fund balance at the end of that period. And here's just a graphical image of that. So as you can see, we all know that with a levy process, it's a very cyclical nature. So when we passed our levy in 2013, you can see that we were just below our unassigned target at that time. With asking for an increase in 2013, we were able to build back up our fund balance and obviously manage our resources efficiently so that we could maintain that fund balance throughout the 7-year period. And as you can see, now we're in that cyclical nature where we're coming down off of that arc, and we're going to be falling below that unassigned fund balance target again, and just at that 6.26% at the end of fiscal year 20. And as I mentioned earlier, we continue to see funding gaps in our state basic ed formula. And so here you can see this gray line on this graph shows where we currently are for funding as a school district. So we're at $6,567 per pupil. And if that had kept up with inflation over the same period of time, we should be at $7,150. So that's a $583 per pupil unit difference, which equates to about $3 million a year we're not getting because that basic formula has not kept pace with inflation. And as I mentioned earlier, with the fact that we're seeing a $2.4 billion deficit, I'm not seeing that that is going to improve anytime soon. So we'll likely see some additional gaps as we move forward. Here you can see this is our voter approved operating levy. As I mentioned earlier, ours currently is sitting at $483 per pupil unit. Keep in mind that all districts across the state have the ability to levy up to $724 per pupil unit, which is called local optional revenue. So that's not included on this graph. This is just strictly what our voters have approved locally on our operating levy. So as you can see, we fall on the bottom third, or we are we're in the bottom, we're 7 out of 9 in the big 9. So you can see that group average falls just below $1,000 per pupil unit, right underneath Winona's. And I do want to mention there's a couple outliers on this graph just so that everyone understands. Austin, you see, is very low as far as what they have for a voter approved operating levy. They're consistently seeing a lot of support from the Hormel Foundation, the Hormel Corporation within that community. So they're not having to ask as much on the voter approved levy piece. Mankato does see a lot of, open enrollment increases in revenue there. So they're able to keep their voter operating levy a little bit lower as well. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have Northfield, who has maxed out their operating levy. So they're able to get just over $2,000 per pupil with that local optional revenue added on top of that. So you can see that we continue to fall behind as far as our operating levy with the group average there too. So the options that we have as we move forward, obviously we know that we can continue to try to manage our financials by just simply cutting expenditures. We can try to do that by obviously increasing our revenue, or we can do that with a combination of both. And obviously, as we all know from looking at, our revenues as they come in, education funding is a shared partnership between the state, the federal, and the local governments. And by law, local voters have the opportunity to provide additional funding for school districts. And as Mr. Elsted's mentioned numerous times, we are the only public entity that has to go out to the voter to ask a question on a ballot. So voters are able to say yes or no to us when we need to build buildings and when we need to pay for those classroom materials and staff costs. So tonight I wanted to talk through 3 different scenarios with you guys as we move forward to try to extend our levy, to extend our financial stability as we move forward. I want to talk about 3 different options and look at those with you tonight. So the first option I'm going to go through is what it would look like if we did a $600 per pupil unit increase in our current operating levy. The second option is going to be a shared approach, where we would look at doing a $300 per pupil unit increase starting in year 2. So we would delay the increase to the second year. So in year 2, we would do an increase of $300 per pupil unit for years 2 through 4. And then years 5 through 10, we look at adding an additional $300 per pupil unit. So we'll look at that. And then the next option is just looking at what it would look like if we just renewed what we have for our current operating levy. And the budget assumptions I'm using for fiscal year 22 and 23, because that is going to be our next biennium with the state. As I mentioned earlier, we're not anticipating that we're going to see much of an increase at all, if any, from the basic formula allowance. So I have moved our revenue increases down to a 0.5% projected increase rather than the 2% that we normally use. And then moving forward from 24 to fiscal year 32, I just continue to use 2%. And then in 22 and 23 for expenditures, I decreased that to a 2.5% increase. We usually average around 3, but knowing that we're going to have to make budget reductions within this period, as well as look at our negotiation strategies moving forward to help maintain and keep some of those expenditures down, so that as we move forward, we can continue some of that financial stability that we need to continue through the next levy period. And then beyond that, I use 3% for fiscal years 24 and 32 in these assumptions. So the first option I mentioned earlier would be that $600 per pupil unit increase. That would bring in about $3.2 million per year for us. And by asking for the $600 per pupil unit, we know we would be able to stabilize our fund balance for a levy period of 10 years with some budget reductions within there. And I just simply wanted to remind everyone on an operating levy question, ag land is not taxed like it is on a bond question. So only the house, the garage, and 1 acre is taxed on an operating levy question, which is different than what happened with when you ask for a bond referendum. So the taxpayer impact on that $600 per pupil unit increase would be approximately $236 per year, or around $19.67 per month. And that's the tax impact on an average home valued around $175,000, which is what we use here in Owatonna. So, and then as I mentioned, we would still need to make some budget reductions within this, because as you know, from approving our budget in February, we are spending down our fund balance underneath that unassigned target. So we've got to make some reductions to be able to build our fund balance back up at the same time as asking for some additional revenue to help stabilize us over that 10-year period of time. So we would be anticipating we'd still make the reductions for fiscal year 21 that we're already planning to make of 2 million. We'd make another 2 million in fiscal year 22, and then another 500,000 in fiscal year 23 with this one. So there would be a total of $4.5 million over the 3 fiscal years with this option, in addition to that ask for that increase of revenue. So as you can see what this does for us with those reductions and the additional revenue, you can see that we again have that cyclical nature of the levy where we're building up our levy over the 10-year period of time. And then we come down to the end of that levy period where we see that we'll be around a 7.36% fund balance at the end of that levy period. And here's just, sorry, you need a magnifying glass for this one, but it just shows the unassigned fund balance at the top there as we're estimating it going throughout that end of that 10-year period of time. And then in the middle, there's the revenue and expenditures. And the very bottom, that percentage is just what I graphed out on the graph before. It's just the percentage of our unassigned fund balance as we move forward. So as you can see, beyond 2031, the end of that 10-year levy period, you can see as we get to 2032, you can see that unassigned fund balance goes down to about 2.42%. So same cyclical nature that we're used to with every operating levy that most school districts do is you build it up and it comes back down again, and then you have to make additional decisions as you move forward. So with the shared approach, as I mentioned earlier, this would essentially be spreading the tax impact out and the revenue impact out over the 10-year period of time rather than asking for it all up front like we would be with the $600 per pupil unit increase. So what we'd essentially be asking here would be a $300 per pupil unit increase for years 2 through 4, and then an additional $300 for years 5 through 10. So this would generate 1.6 million in new revenue years 2 through 4, and then an additional 1.6 million in years 5 through 10. So with this approach, I look at it as partnering with the community to help stabilize our fund balance for the 10 years of time, because we're going to be obviously making budget reductions and tightening our belts on our end, but also asking for those gradual increases in revenue as we need it throughout that 10-year period of time to make sure that we're being financially stable through that 10-year period of time. With this approach, we also, like I said, it provides us financial stability for the 10-year period. So the taxpayer impact on this option would be about $120 per year or $10 a month for years 2 through 4, and then an additional $120 per year or $10 per month for years 5 through 10. So with this scenario, since we're stretching that revenue out over that time period, instead of asking for it all up front, we will have to have a little bit more budget reductions built into this model in order to make that work for that 10-year period. So we'll have to do the 2 million that we've already planned for 21, 2 million in 22, and then another 1.25 million in fiscal year 23. So a total of 5.25 million over 3 fiscal years with this option to make sure that we can maintain through that 10-year period of time. So as you can see here, just graphing this out again, as we look at that graph going up and that cyclical nature coming down at the end of the levy cycle. Like I said, we're coming down just below around 5, at the end of the levy, we're coming around 5% at the end of 2031 there. And this is just the numbers kind of showing where those percentages are. So if we take a look at a renewal only, essentially with a renewal only, what we're asking is just to simply extend what we currently have. We're not asking for additional revenue here. We're just asking to extend. There is a little bit of an impact as far as a yearly amount on our current renewal because we do have an inflationary factor. And based on that inflationary factor, if you look at what the tax impact be would on simply renewing would be around $6 per year on an average household size for us. So essentially we're asking for no new revenue and for everything to stay the same, but we do have an inflationary factor built in to our current levy. And we do know that a vast majority of renewals that have been asked for in the last few years have passed. And we certainly know that a renewal would help us to weather through the next couple of years. But we know that it would be just simply a Band-Aid and that we would have to be doing something as we move forward to make sure that we can create that financial stability. And so we know from looking at the numbers that we would need to go out and ask for an increase in November of 21 or November of 22 at the very latest in order to make sure that we're stabilizing our fund balance over that 10-year period of time. And I also wanted to remind everyone that, as I mentioned earlier, if we don't get a renewal, we do lose that $2.6 million of revenue per year. And then as we look forward on this model, if we look out and we have, don't make any additional significant cuts, we don't ask for additional revenue, we just simply renew, we would be in statutory operating debt by the end of fiscal year 27 with this option, which is somewhere we do not want to be as a school district. So in looking at this model, I've projected, budget reductions of 2 million for the fiscal year 21 and 22, and then another $1 million in 23. And that would just help us to maintain an unassigned fund balance of around 5% at that point with making those reductions. And we know our board unassigned fund balance target is 8 to 10%. So here's how that graph looks. And as you can see through fiscal year 24, we can maintain some semblance of a fund balance, but after that, it drops off very quickly without doing something additional. And that's just the same with the numbers. So obviously, as I've mentioned a few times here, if the operating levy fails, we know we lose $2.6 million a year. So what does that mean as far as budget reductions we would have to make? We've been talking about, with these other scenarios, we'd have to make, around 4.5 to 5.25 million. Well, if our levy renewal fails and we don't get a renewal at all, we'd have to make considerable budget reductions. So we'd have to look at 2 million in fiscal year 21, about 5 million in fiscal year 22, and about 1.5 million in fiscal year 23, just to make sure we can maintain an appropriate fund balance as we move forward. So there would be significant budget reductions. And as we look at those numbers, just putting together ideas as far as if we had to make $5 million in budget reductions, what does that look like for us as a district? We're looking at between 30 to 40 teaching positions being eliminated, potentially if you look at administrative positions being eliminated, support staff being eliminated, elementary class sizes going up. Essentially, some of our class sizes right now, we try to keep low in the 19 to 20, 21 range. We could be looking at class sizes going up to as high as 30 to 35, depending on those budget reduction targets that we have to hit. And we'd also be looking at programs and activities that would be reduced or eliminated. So here you can just see, as we move forward with a renewal failure, making those significant reductions helps us for a little bit, but it significantly drops off, obviously, beyond the point where we would not want to be. So here's just a summary of those options that I've just kind of went over. Essentially, the $600 per pupil unit and the $300 shared approach, like I said earlier, would get us to an appropriate unassigned fund balance at the end of that fiscal year 2031. We would make that work. We could make that work for that 10-year period of time. But we know with the renewal only or the renewal failure, obviously, we'd be looking at statutory operating debt or having to make significant budget reductions moving forward if we do not get any additional revenue. And so we met as a board finance committee on May 7th and kind of walked through a lot of this and had a lot of good dialogue about this. So I guess I'll open it up first if we want to start with maybe some of the board finance committee's thoughts, comments on our conversations.
Okay, board finance would be Lori, Jolene, and Tim.
Yep.
So we'll start with the three of you, thoughts or comments that you would be willing to share here.
Well, Tim, Jolene, you guys want to go, or I can jump in?
Go ahead.
So yeah, we did have some real healthy, conversations around actually these three options. We looked at a fourth option, and yet I think these are the three right ones to be discussing this evening. I think the other big challenge and question that we wrestled with was the 1 or 2 question issue. And maybe Amanda's getting to that, but it is such an, we keep saying it over and over, such an unprecedented, unusual part in our history that personally, I think I'm really struggling with trying to be responsive to our constituents who may be struggling financially. But at the same time, as a board member and being responsible for our school district, recognize, I think we all do, that that we have to keep this organization in the black. We need to keep it financially sound, and we need to put the appropriate questions in front of our constituents so that they can answer the question and provide the support that we really need.
Yeah, but more to your point about the two questions and things that we wrestled with, yes, I can address that a little bit here. So essentially where we're at with having to go out for renewal in November is we are at what's called a last chance levy. Like we don't have another year. If, we go out and ask all of these questions combined, we don't have another year to come back and ask for a different question. So what essentially would happen, or we would want to look at as a board, obviously, is if we go with an option of asking for an increase, it would likely be a potential 2-question ballot where you would ask, your first question would be the renewal. And then your second question could potentially be the increase that you would choose to pick on these paths here.
If I might add a little commentary, I absolutely hear what you're saying, Lori, about being attentive to the community and the economic situation that we're in right now. One of the things that we continue to look at, and that's why we prepared that shared approach to consider. One quick reminder is that if you look at the way that taxation is leveled, you don't see any increase coming in year one. And so for fiscal year, I think, well, for 2022, as it were, there would be no increase in taxes for operating levy in response to recognizing that there's still a need that we have, but yet also looking toward the economic potential of economic recovery that we have moving forward. And so that's why it's shared in that way to recognize where that comes from. So again, that's one thing I think that's remarkable within that particular consideration or approach. The other thing I would mention too is that, when the last tax statements came out in November, and again, you look at it and it is parsed out with bond and operating, but many people look at it as just one shared kind of taxation by the school district. One of the things that we were not able to recognize within that particular tax statement was the savings that we achieved as we sold our bonds. And if you remember, when we were projecting what those bond inflation rates may be, we were projecting at a rate of 4%. We were able to sell those at 2.4% because we caught a market that was prime for us. So if we have crunched some numbers to identify what would the total taxation, how would that be, looked at, and what we felt was for a typical home, again at 175,000. We feel like the taxpayers will see about a $5 reduction per month or $60 a year based upon what was agreed to with our bond referendum. With this piece, then, if we're looking at the shared approach, it does offer an opportunity to at least share that so that the net increase may look more like a $5 per month increase that we're looking at. And again, trying to find a way to be responsible to our community members to say we recognize where we're at, but we also can't get too far ahead of ourselves in recognizing that if we don't look at a funding source, we will have to continually come out every November. If we just get renewal, we'll make no bones about it. We will have to come out every November until we get the community to recognize the need and position it with the community so that we can get an approval of some additional funding that would help us to balance our budget out through the next 10 years. So again, there's just a couple of things I wanted to mention there as part of our discussion. And we've been incredibly transparent as a school district, and that will continue to be our mode of operation. And recognizing that, yes, we have a renewal that's out there, but I think it would be irresponsible of the administration anyway to not at least enter into what our needs will be moving forward so that the community can clearly see that.
How about Tim and or Jolene? Could you weigh in with your perspective as a member on the finance committee?
Sure, I can. The timing's terrible. We kind of know that. But there's not really any fat in our budget to cut. So if we don't do something from a revenue perspective, we're gonna hurt the education we can offer. And I don't want to see that. I mean, I really believe that people hopefully will understand, but yeah, it's from a current economy perspective, it's terrible. But we know that this cyclical thing was coming, and it was a discussion point during bond conversations that there would be a levy necessary. And I think putting it in front of the community and helping them understand this is their scenario. And I like the shared option just because we do, the timing right now is what it is. To be able to kind of defer, I think would be a good option.
And I can reiterate what Lori and Tim had to say. I agree with all of that. And with the shared option, I appreciate the long-term vision of we're good from a school district standpoint on both buildings and day-to-day operations for a decade. You don't need to hear from us from a financial standpoint. This is what we're going to do. This is going to be consistent with our transparency and how this levy is going to go. Our buildings are in great shape. Like, we're good for 10 years, community. Just help us cross this next step and then we'll carry on. So that approach appeals to me as a taxpayer and as a board member.
Okay, Amanda, could you take this screen down so we can see one another again? And while you're doing that, to the board, here's what the timeline looks like. Tonight, we're hearing all about this really for the first time and having an opportunity to process it. When we meet again in a month and a half at the end of June, that's the point in time when we really, as a board, need to give this administrative team direction, with regard to what are we going to do. And it's at the end of June that we would say to Mr. Elstad, okay, this is the approach we want you to take. Please prepare the documentation necessary for a levy to be presented to the community on the November ballot. And we would then approve that at our July meeting. So we have tonight to talk about it. We have another opportunity at the end of June to talk about this. But I feel like it's really important for all of us to weigh in here. And Nikki, I'll turn to you and ask you, how do you feel about what you're hearing here tonight?
I think it's pretty consistent on we have a basic understanding that we are not getting full funding from the state, so we need that extra funding. I think that one of the communication points that we need to make sure is understood by everybody is the difference between a bond and a levy. I think that the fact that people just voted in favor of the bond and now we're coming back asking for this levy, I think there's going to be some confusion as to why we're needing more money.
You make a good point, and I think that to the best of our ability, the educational process between now and November will be incredibly high, just to help people with that understanding. Eric, I'm going to turn to you. Your thoughts on all of this?
Being on the facilities committee, this was a fear we had for the last several years with going out for the bond vote, was if it didn't pass that first year, that these could be abutting up close to each other and not look the best. I think the numbers for that 300 and then 300 look very well versus piling it all up in one chunk right away, spreading it out, coming back up years later for a little bit of very gradual is very appealing, even after this pandemic and job insecurities at this time for after the pandemic gets lifted. If they look back, it's something school districts have to do because we have to put it to a vote. We can't just do it like counties and cities do and just take their money. But at the same time, these last 7 years, we said we would make it work, and we did. And we're saying right now, here's what we're proposing. So trust us again. So we'll show you what we can do.
Right. Thank you. Christina, can you weigh in on this, please?
Yeah, I think right now our biggest piece is going to be that educating people as to what we're asking for. I do like the shared option as far as waiting out another year before asking to add something on as we get past this unprecedented time. But I also see the value in having that 10-year secured plan where we aren't going to come back. So I think there's a lot of thought that I need to put into, kind of where I'm sitting on it. But I think there's value in both of those options. And I think that with the right education for our constituents, we may be able to make either of them fly. I'm not 100%, but nothing really is right now.
Christina, thank you. I want to go ask if we can go around the horn on this. And, Amanda has presented this on the basis or the idea that we would perhaps ask two questions. Question one being just straight up renewal. And then the second question being any potential additions that have been presented. Where do you folks stand? Tim, where do you stand on that idea of one question or a split question?
Well, I think we need to just ask for the renewal as a first question, just because the consequences of not renewing are so drastic. And then whatever we choose as a second question makes sense to me to, put that forward as get us that 10 years and we'll leave you alone.
Jolene, what do you think?
Two questions. Number one, renewal. Number two, the shared option, the 10-year plan, just to buy time.
Sorry about that. And by the shared approach, do you mean the stepped approach?
Yes, the year 2 through 4 at $10 a month, and then year 3 through 10 at an additional 10. Yeah.
Thanks. Lori, how about you?
Yeah, that really makes the most sense to me. I mean, there's always a risk you don't get the second question, but I would align with what Jolene just summarized. I think the other point, I'll just make a quick point. It's unrelated to your question, Mark, but just to clarify, we talk about the second option, the 300 as a shared one. Well, the reality is we have significant cuts built into all three options, even the 600 up front, right? I mean, we're cutting what, $4.5 million over 3 years. So when we get to the messaging part, I don't know. I just want to be careful that we communicate. We're really sharing regardless of which path we take, because those cuts are in there and they vary. I appreciate that. But anyway, I'm with Jolene. I do two questions. I do two, and I do the renewal first, and I do the middle 300 option second.
Okay, thanks. How about you, Nikki? What are your thoughts on the approach with the ballot?
I agree that the two questions probably makes the most sense, because bottom line, we need at least the renewal. And I think we lose that as an option with only one. But my concern is with a two question, people, I think we run the risk of not getting the second one as in a positive nature, just because they think they've already given us everything they want to give us with the first vote of a yes. So that would be my only concern. And then we're still going to have to come back, I imagine, to try and get additional the next time. So it seems kind of sneaky in a way. But I understand the concept that we need need to at least renew, if nothing else.
Great. Eric, your thoughts?
Two-step vote. We got to make sure we secure the renewal at least.
Christina?
I agree that a 2-question vote would be best. I think giving people options allows them a little bit more control in the process and makes them feel that they have a little bit more impact on what they're saying. Whether or not we would get both questions, I don't know. But I think it's important to give them the options.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, in fact, when Mr. Elstad and I were talking about this prior, he reminded me that when we asked the community the split vote question for the bond, I don't know that any of us had particularly strong sentiment that that second question was going to carry, and it did. It meant a lot to the community, and they ratified that second question. So it's worth at least taking into our overall consideration. Logan, how does all of this sound to you? You're a beneficiary of the educational system here, but are these concepts and terms that resonate with you, or does it seem foreign and remote?
I think I do like the concept of the 2-vote idea, so that the people get the idea that they have control over the situation and what they need. And that it is very important to have these pass for the students.
Thank you. All right, Amanda, what do you think? Oh, Lori, go ahead.
Yeah, and just a question, Amanda, I don't expect you to know it, or maybe Jeff, you know. Could we learn a little bit about historically other districts, Owatonna, what happens on a 2-question levy vote in terms of success on that second question? I don't know if that's a fair, again, I wouldn't expect an answer tonight, but I'd be curious if you have experience or if we have history in this district about how levies have gone. And I know history is different, circumstances change, there are lots of moving parts, but any thoughts tonight or something?
I have a few thoughts, like as far as, historically for us as a district, timing wise, we've been able to ask questions where we've been able to maybe do a combination question where we're, saying we want to renew, but we also need an increase in our levy. And we've had an additional year in case that, wouldn't go through where we could ask that again. But with the timing lining up the way that it is right now, it's just simply at a point where we're at a last chance and we don't have that extra year to come back. So that's why I'm suggesting potentially a 2-question ballot in that regard. And so in our history, it's been a little bit different because we haven't been at this exact timing per se. As far as this strategy, there have been, I think, 3 or 4 districts in the last 2 years now that have asked a strategy somewhat similar to this, where they've had that second question where they've asked for an incremental increase, and those have passed. Obviously, different communities, different situations, but it has been a strategy that has worked, and that's why it was something that I moved forward on. So it is something that has worked for other districts.
I guess I would add to that. I'm not certain as to the history of Owatonna. We can certainly research that and bring that back to the board at our next meeting to answer that question. I think, as Amanda pointed out, we have a last chance levy to at least renew without causing what I believe to be devastating cuts to our school district. Owatonna prides itself on an education system that offers unique opportunities that other students perhaps don't always get. But furthermore, we also are looking for opportunities for our students that will set us apart from others. And I think that's the expectation. When I was hired as the superintendent, I believe that continues to be the expectation. I'll mention our career pathway program at the high school. That program is designed to set ourselves apart, to prepare a workforce that understands clearly how to prepare themselves for a career in a different way that will be relevant and authentic. We're designing a high school around that very thought. One of my fears is that if we don't recognize the need for at least a renewal, and I would advocate for a slight increase or shared increase, we end up in a situation where we're having systems that really need to function to move us forward in that way that won't be allowed to do that. And I have to advocate. I think it's irresponsible for us to not tell the community what we need, because if in fact a renewal is the direction that the board goes in, and that a renewal only, or in fact if there's a 2-question ballot and the community supports the renewal, I need to make this crystal clear to the community that in November of 2021 we will be out asking again, because I believe in the school district, I believe in this community, and without having their continued financial support, we just simply won't be able to do some of the things that we've been able to do and provide for our students and community. So again, all of these options have been prepared for you to carefully consider as a board. And I fully recognize the economic situation that we're in right now. But again, I believe we've tried to craft some approaches that recognize where we're at in unprecedented times, but also recognizing the fact that if we don't respond in some way financially, our education system in Owatonna will suffer. And the cuts will be deep, and they won't be discriminatory. It'll be across the board. Administration, teaching staff, support staff, and program. We call those cuts programs and people. And sports programs and other fine arts programs, it's really hard for a community to recover from that. And so I'm hopeful that as we consider these things moving forward, that will be part of our, obviously, as board members, you will be considerate of that. So that's all I have.
Board members, any final thoughts, any closing thoughts on any of this? Okay, as we move forward, there are 2 things that would be, I think, really instrumental in achieving success with this, and not the least of which would be to remind the community that there's been a common denominator. Eric and I were on the board 7 years ago when this levy was originally passed, and Amanda is the common denominator. And I remember Eric and I were really very, very new board members at that point in the game, and we very, very deliberately chose an approach with that levy to say, we're not asking for the sun and the moon, but instead we fashioned it at a level that we said, this is basically all we really need right now. And we let that inflation adjustment every year help us rather than asking for a lot right off the bat. And Amanda did, I think, a spectacular job of managing all of this for us. And the second thing, and as difficult as the last 2.5 months have been, boy, the community, it's very front and center how important the educational system is to our community. And you know what? 6 months from now in November, it's going to be noisy and loud and cluttered. And the necessity for us to stay steady and true and consistent with our messaging, and that is that the foundation of trust that the community afforded the school district 7 years ago has been maintained impeccably. And it's the same people. Amanda is the same person that would be guiding this ahead for the next decade. So with that, there are administrators on here, and I certainly want to, Danielle or Chris or Bob, Michelle, Sarah, any of you that have, closing thoughts on this that would be relevant and germane and beneficial to the board, we'd sure like to hear it. Okay. Quick reminder, this is something that we're going to just sit tight on. We have a 1.5 month responsibility. Talk to your neighbors, talk to people in the community, get a sense of your community members of where people stand on this, because at the end of June, that's go time for us. Any last comments on this before we move on?
If I might, Mark, I just wanted to comment. So with the timeline that you suggested, we stand ready to answer questions. And so as board members, as you're considering this moving forward, we're at your beck and call to provide information for you that you would be needing to further your decision-making. Within that, as Mark indicated, we'll be looking for some direction at the meeting on June 29th to then finally prepare a ballot for your consideration and approval on July 13th, which is our only meeting in July, which meets the timeline appropriated from the Minnesota Department of Education for referendums that would be run on the November 6th election day. So with that, we're staying at the ready, and we're available to answer questions and help with your thinking on that as well.
All right, with that, Amanda, I think you just did a spectacular job of putting that PowerPoint together. I thought you just laid everything out in a very patient, steady, very contemplative manner, and it really helps. So thank you.
Thank you.
The last item tonight would be board forum. A quick around the horn as you appear on my screen. Jolene, anything for board forum? Does Quinn have anything for board forum?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the board stuff.
Yeah. Thank you, Quinn. Tim, anything to add?
No.
Christina?
Nope, nothing.
Okay, thanks. Lori?
Oh, I'm good.
Logan?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, it is my last meeting before I graduate. So it's been fun. And I've had a great time. I didn't expect it to end like this, but yeah.
Logan, you are not getting off that easy, my friend.
No?
No. So you will graduate on June 7th. That is true. But I think, Mr. Sebring, I'm probably stealing your thunder here when I mentioned to you that June 8th is our next work session together. And Logan, we'd like you to join us on June 8th as well, because we'd like to take some time during that work session to celebrate you and the perspective that you have brought to the board as the first student representative to the Owatonna School Board.
Well, I'd love to.
So you started the legacy here, but I know that this, as you mentioned, you are correct. This is your last board meeting before you graduate, but we do want you to join us on Monday, June 8th, so that we can celebrate you in a different way as well.
Well, I'll be there.
Good. We will plan on that.
Mhm.
Nikki, anything to add for board forum?
No, I just saw on Twitter the announcement of the three commencement speakers. Just wanted to, say congratulations to them. And it sounds like graduation will be a very unique experience that will probably share lots of memories for that class. Even though it's different, I'm sure it'll be something they can talk about forever.
Agreed. Eric, anything for board forum?
Nothing tonight.
Okay. Folks, with that, thank you. Thanks to all for hanging tough with all of this. I will make the motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Sarah has it all compiled. We'll go around. Eric, one more time, please.
Nikki?
Aye.
Jolene?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Christina?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
And I myself an aye. 7-0 to end the meeting.
Motion carries. Eric, thank you very much. Folks, thank you all very much. Please get out and enjoy the balance of what appears to be a fabulous first summer evening here. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.